Hey everybody, welcome to our first video of 2024. Today we're going to be doing a pretty big project that we've been anticipating for a while. It's going to be how to play Flames of War 5th edition. So I'm joined with my good friend Everett, and we're ready to play a game and explain how it works. So today we're going to be playing Americans versus Germans. All the models except the German Stukas can be found in the Hit the Beach starter set. Highly recommend that starter set because it comes with almost everything you need to start playing the game. And the armies that it gives you are pretty fair. I think the Americans get 52 points and the Germans get 51 points. It also comes with the Flames of War rulebook, and it comes with dice, but we're just going to be using our own dice today. It doesn't come with very much terrain, but you can use books, bottles, cardboard boxes, but whatever. So what you'll need to play Flames of War is you're going to need the rulebook, a tape measure. You're going to need some terrain to play on, whether that's whatever you want to make up yourself. You'll need some dice. You'll need your models and your infantry cards, your unit cards. And then you'll need your enemies' models and unit cards. And most importantly, you will need an opponent. So before I go into all the rules, I'm just going to explain how the unit cards work. So just follow the arrows. So in the top left, we have motivation. So this is for counterattacking, remounting, rallying. We'll get into all those things later. But the number next to it just means that when you roll the dice to determine whether you're remounting or last stand or whatever, you just have to roll either a 4+ or a 3+ in this case for last stand. So skill is for assaults and movement orders and a couple other things like sighting in. Again, I'll go into all these later. Just remember that the skill is located right there. Is hit on is when an enemy is firing at this unit, the unit is hit on a 4, so when the enemy rolls their dice, then a 4 or higher will hit them. And then its infantry save is 3+, which means that this unit gets to roll for its saves with a 3+. So its tactical is 8 inches. You can see this in the middle of the card. Its terrain dash is 8 inches. Its cross-country dash is 12 inches. Its road dash is 12 inches as well, and its cross is auto. So just remember what all those are, and I'll get into them a little bit later. And then its weapons. So it has the MG42, so the weapon has a range of 16, which means it can shoot up to 16 inches away. It's ROF, whether it's halted or moving. So if it moved that round, then it shoots that it's moving. If it didn't, then it shoots that it's halted. Anti-tank and firepower, we'll get into those. And then notes are on the back of the card. And if the unit card is a tank team, it looks a little bit different. So motivation is hit on and skill, same with movement, is the same. But instead of having a save, they have armor. So its armor on the front is 6, its armor on the side and on the rear is 4, and on the top it's 1. You can also see that under the weapons, how the M4 Sherman 50 cal MG and the M4 Sherman MG has the same color background. That means that you can fire them simultaneously during the shooting step. Depending on what scenario you're going to play, you might need to bring a couple of extra things. So if you are playing with artillery, you might need to bring an artillery template. We'll go over these later. And if you're playing with point objectives, then you'll need to bring objectives. I'm going to quickly go over how battle groups and formations work. So this is the unit card that comes in the Hit the Beach set. You can see all of these individual things. All of these together make what we call the battle group, and each of those is a formation. So in every book, you can find formations, and I'm just going to freeze it here so I can show you how formations work. So formations aren't necessary to play the game, but if you want to use them, you can. Me and Everett usually don't. But how a formation works is that you choose a formation. Say you chose the M4 Sherman Tank Company. You would have to take every unit that is colored in black. So in this example, you'd have to take an M4 Sherman Tank Company HQ and then a tank platoon, or 2 tank platoons. And then if you wanted to add them to the formation, you could take the armored mortar platoon, the assault gun platoon, or another Sherman tank platoon. There's one of the cards for one of the units you could add onto the formation. Find all of these in all of the books, just depending on which faction you choose to play. So each of these is a unit card, which corresponds to a unit, and each unit is made up of individual teams. So you can see that this unit has 2 MP40 SMG teams and costs 2 points. This one has 7 MG42 teams, and it costs 9 points. This one has 2 M4 Shermans, and it costs 9 points. But this one is a company HQ. This is really only important if you're playing with formations. but they are usually better. They usually have better stats, so it's not always a bad idea to take HQs. And you can see here that if you want to take 5 Shermans, it's 21 points, 4 Shermans 17, 3 Shermans 13. You can also see how in the top right how this one doesn't have an HQ. So this is the infantry unit. You can do this thing called upgrading using options. So if you would like to add more infantry to your infantry platoon, then you can take them for more points. I took a bazooka and 2 M1919 teams here, and just add the points to make it more expensive but a better unit. So now that we have both of our armies, we're going to choose the from the basic missions. This is found in the rulebook. So there's all these different missions. You can roll to see which one you want to do, but we're just going to do Annihilation for today. So you can see that the deployment zones are set up 12 inches from the thick border edge, not the skinny border edge. So what we're going to do is we're just going to find 12 inches, 12 inches. I'm just going to put a dice down to remember where the deployment zone is on each side. And then me and Everett are going to roll off to see who deploys first. So Everett rolled higher than me, so he chose to deploy first, and he chose this table end to deploy on. So Everett's going to put his least important unit down first so that it doesn't jeopardize anything. So he's just going to take this little SMG team, and he's just going to put them anywhere in his deployment zone. Now it's my turn to deploy. I also happen to take my HQ, and I'm just going to put them in this field. So I'll explain the benefits of terrain in a sec, but it's Everett's turn to deploy now, so he's going to take one of his infantry teams, and he's just going to put them right there. I follow suit by putting my infantry team behind cover, and then he places his artillery down. So let me quickly go over how terrain works. So the biggest piece of terrain here is the crop fields, which is considered short terrain, which means it conceals any units that are within 4 inches of it, but it does not give bulletproof cover unless it's specific terrain. Now that we have all of our units deployed, we're going to start the game. Everett starts because he chose to deploy first. So there's 4 main phases, starting with the starting step. So these are all the things that you have to do at the start of your starting step, but because this is the first round, we don't really have to do any of those things. The first thing that happens at the movement phase is movement orders. So there's a couple of different types of movement orders, including blitz move, shoot and scoot, dig in, follow me, and cross here. Any unit leader can issue any movement order to their unit, except for gun teams who can only issue dig in and cross here. So Everett wants his Panzer Grenadiers to do a blitz move, so he's going to roll his skill. So he rolled 3 on his Panzer Grenadiers, which are their skill. So he's going to issue a blitz move, which means that he can move 4 inches, and if he doesn't choose to move forward any more, then his Panzer Grenadiers can shoot with their halted ROF, which is a pretty good move. And because they are Germans, they have something called Stormtrooper, which means they get to issue another movement order if their first one was successful. So during the movement phase, there's something called staying in command. So every unit has their unit leader. I like to signify my unit leaders by having the cupola off and the commander sticking his head out. You can do it with markings or camouflage or whatever. At the end of the movement phase, all members of the unit must be within 6 inches of the unit leader. So the one to the left of this panzer is. This one, sadly, is not. Which means that he has 2 options. Either he cannot move this movement phase, and then he continues the rest of the game as normal, or he can tactical, and all of his weapons are +1 to hit now, or he can dash closest to, as close as he can towards the unit leader. But if a unit has 8 or more teams, whether it's a tank or an artillery or infantry unit, then the range is extended to 8 inches instead of 6. There are 4 different distances that a unit can move during the movement phase after it's done its movement orders and check to make sure it's in command. These are its tactical, so they move this if they wish to continue shooting. Their terrain dash, which they only move if they're going through rough terrain. Their cross-country dash if they're going through flat terrain, and their road dash if they're on a road. As you see here, these 2 Shermans are trying to get over this river, which means they must roll crosses. Roll a dice for each team in the unit, And if it's higher than the units cross, then they cross the terrain. If it's not, then they are left on the outskirts of the terrain. In some situations, a unit might be faced with a minefield, indicated by this dice here. It has a range of 2 inches, so any unit that moves through a minefield must roll a skill check for the entire unit, using their unit's skill. If they pass, then the unit can go right on through, but if the unit fails, then it must roll saves for every single team in its unit. The minefield does not go away. Had the unit that triggered the minefield been an armored tank unit instead of an infantry unit, then the mines would do 5 anti-tank to the top armor of the unit with instant firepower. After the movement step, if a unit chose to take a tactical or did not move, then they are allowed to shoot. First, start shooting by checking whether the enemy is within range of the weapons. This pack team has 32-inch range, which means that these Shermans are within range of the pack's weapons. However, there's a rule in this game that states that if an enemy unit is further than 16 inches away from the unit that's shooting, then it's +1 to hit. Next, the pack teams must check whether they have line of sights on the Sherman, which they do. However, these Panzer IVs over here do not have line of sight on the Shermans hidden behind the hill. I should remind you, though, that any unit must be within 4 inches to receive the benefit of cover from terrain, like these guys are here. After you've checked range and made sure you have line of sight and they're not concealed, then you must rotate to face and declare targets. These packs are going to shoot at these 3 Shermans. So they rotate to face, and they declare their targets. Now, we see how many shots they can take based on their ROF. So they did not move, which means they can each shoot twice. So 4 dice rolling against the Shermans, which are hit on a 4, but because they're at further than 16, then they'll be hit on a 5. So we roll our 4 dice hitting on 5s, and we get 2 hits. But there's a rule in this game that states that all hits must be distributed evenly. So there's 3 tanks, which means that 2 of them get hits, not one of them gets 2 hits. So an infantry save is just 3+ or 4+. It's just determined by the card, but armor saves are a little different. So you roll a dice and you add it to the type of armor that's getting shot at. This time it's front armor. The front armor on this Sherman is 6, which means if you roll this dice, you add that number to the 6, and that's how much armor it has. So we get a 6 and a 3, which means one tank has 12 armor and one tank has 9 armor. If we go to the anti-tank of the pack, then we can see that it has 12 anti-tank, which means that the Sherman that has the 9 armor on its front has failed its armor save. We roll something called firepower to see whether the round does enough damage to successfully injure and destroy the tank. Pack has a firepower of 3+, and Everett rolled a 4, which means that this tank is destroyed. You can leave it on the field as terrain. You can put smoke on it. It does act as terrain for infantry squads, but that tank can no longer be crewed. Had the firepower failed, then it would be bailed out, which means the team of the tank has left the tank to either perform repairs or because they're too scared to continue fighting, which means that the tank is still in play and has the possibility of returning to play, but it's inoperable until it remounts. Now, because this tank has an armor of 12, which is equal to the anti-tank of the pack, the firepower will determine whether it bails or does nothing to the tank. So we can see here that it fails, which means the tank does not take any, it is not destroyed and it's not bailed out. But had the firepower been successful, then it would have bailed out the tank. And had the armor been higher than the anti-tank of the pack, it would have just done nothing. You don't roll firepower. Now say this Sherman team was here and wished to open fire on the Panzer Grenadiers over here. First, you would check range, check concealment, rotate to face, declare targets, and then see how many shots you get. But because these two have the same background color, that means that you can fire them simultaneously. But because they move, they will only be firing 4 shots each. Shooting 4 times, so 8 dice, hitting on 4s because they're not further than 16 feet away, and the infantry team is hit on a 4, as you can see there. So 4 hits are scored, which means the infantry now get to roll saves. The infantry roll saves equal to the number that is hit, and their save is 3+, which means that every roll of 3 or higher will result in an infantry squad not dying. They roll all 3 pluses except for 1, which means that 1 squad dies. The defender or owner of the squad gets to choose which squad is taken off the field. Now say that this Panzer Grenadier platoon wished to fire at the American troops, then they would fire twice per MG42 team, which there are 7 of, and then they have 1 Panzerschreck team, which means they're going to fire the Panzerschreck once. All guns are within range, and they're not further than 16 inches, which means that the Americans are getting hit on 4s, 15 shots coming in, and it looks like 8 make their mark. The Americans have a save of 3+, which means they roll all successful hits and see how many they save. Looks like they don't save 2 of them, which means 2 Americans die, and the defender gets to pick which ones do. Assaulting is very risky, but if an enemy unit is within 4 inches of one of your units, you can choose to assault on your turn. First, declare which unit is assaulting and which unit it is assaulting, and then move them 4 inches closer to the units that they're assaulting. If you have to roll terrain cross, roll right now, but these are infantry, so they auto-cross. Now, the unit that is getting assaulted gets to roll defensive fire. Any other friendly unit within 8 inches that can see the unit that is assaulting the defending unit can roll defensive fire as well. This is just like the shooting phase, but it's just the units that are within 8 inches and can see the assaulting unit. If the Sherman 76s did not move this turn, then they'd be shooting 5 each, which means 15 shots going at the Germans in defensive fire. The Germans are hit on 4, and they're not further than 16 inches, which means they roll 15 dice hitting on 4s. It looks like 9 of those shots hit, which means the Germans now get to roll saves. And it wasn't very good saving for the Germans, because they lost 3 guys. The American infantry that are getting assaulted also get to fire defensive fire. They fire 13 times, hitting on 4s. The Germans must then roll 8 saves. And they only save 2 of them. 3 of them. They save 3 of them. Which means that 1 guy's left. Now, in reality, this assault would have never worked anyways, because a unit can be forced to fall back if during defensive fire the unit is hit 5 times. That does not mean casualties. If it is hit 5 times by enemy fire, then it is forced to fall back. But let's say that the assault was successful. The Panzer Grenadiers roll their skill as their attack, and as there are 8 of them, there are 8 attacks coming in hitting on 3s. So this is like them hitting people over the head with shovels and bayonets and grenades and stuff. So it looks like only 4 of those hit, which means that the Americans get to roll saves, and they don't save 2 of them, which means that 2 American teams die. So 2 of my guys are taken away, and I choose those 2, and if I wanted to, I could counterattack, which is the exact same thing as the assault, but instead of using skill, I would use my motivation. Infantry can also assault tanks. So after defensive fire, move your infantry closer, and you can either assault using one of your infantry's weapons on the side and rear armor of the tank, or you can use improvised weapons, which is just 5 anti-tank on the top armor of the tank with automatic firepower. If the infantry are concealed before assaulting the tank, then the tank does not get to fire defensive fire. This is called surprise attack. So this unit has a Panzerschreck, and it has an anti-tank of 11 and a firepower of 5+, so they'll probably use that, but they only have one of them, so if they wish, they could use improvised weapons for each team to assault the top armor of the Shermans. So in this game, if an infantry unit is shot enough times, it can be pinned down. So for any units under 12 teams, if they're hit 5 times during the shooting phase, then they're pinned down, which means they can't move closer to the enemy that's shooting at them. They have to move away from the enemy that's shooting at them, and they have to fire at their moving ROF, whether they moved or not. If the team is if the unit is 12 teams or bigger, then they have to get hit 7 times instead of 5 to be pinned down. As you can see here, after a unit is pinned down, they have to roll something called a rally during the starting step. Just roll the unit's motivation. You can see here that I failed, but had I passed, then their pinned down marker is removed. As you can recall earlier, this tank was bailed out, which is very similar to pin down, but it's for tank teams. It means that they must also rally, but it's called a remount. So roll the motivation or the remount score if your tank has a specific remount score. And if you score equal to or higher than your remount score, then your team gets back in the tank and they can continue fighting. Last stand is another motivation check that must be rolled when there's only one team left in a unit. So say there was 3 teams of Shermans in a unit and 2 of them died, you must roll last stand during the starting step, which is just your motivation or under it if it has last stand. If a team fails its last stand roll, then it is removed from play. If you are playing with a formation, there is also formation last stand, meaning that if only one unit in the formation is left, then that unit must roll last stand, and if it fails, then it's removed from play. So say both the Panzer Grenadier squadrons and the HQ were gone, the Panzer IVs would have to roll formation last stand just once. If they failed, then they would be removed from play. So going back a couple of steps, let's talk about artillery. This mortar team that the Americans have is the only artillery that comes in the Hit the Beach set. But as you can see here, 60mm mortar has a range of 32 inches, but it doesn't have an ROF. It just says artillery. So how does artillery work? Well, artillery is a little different as it uses a template instead of the amount of stuff hit. This is a salvo template. The smaller one is an artillery template. If something had salvo written where artillery is on the unit card, then it would be a salvo weapon, not an artillery weapon. Battlefront, the creator of Flames of War, sells artillery templates and salvo templates, but a salvo template is 10 by 10 inches, and an artillery template is 6 by 6 inches if you want to make one yourself. So what I'm holding here is a range-in token. So whoever owns artillery can put one of these down at the start of the game, and this is the middle of the artillery template. So any models under this template will be affected. But an artillery template cannot be put 4 inches or closer to any friendly unit. This is called danger close. Same thing applies for a salvo template, but instead of being 4 inches, it's 6 inches is danger close. So we would not be allowed to fire here because the salvo template is closer than 6 inches. So remember the range-in token that we put down at the start of the game? That's not the only place that artillery can fire. Artillery can range in other places. But just remember that you can only have one range-in token on the board. So, range tokens can be put down by any unit that has the observer keyword. So say this unit of USA infantry saw this further unit of Panzer Grenadiers over here, then they could range in on it. They just have to roll their skill, or if they have a special range-in ability. But if they fail the first time, so say their skill is a 3+ and they fail the first time, they can try to range in again, but it goes up to a 4+. And then they can range in one more time, but it goes up to a 5+. If the team successfully ranges in, make sure to check the artillery's range, because it may not be able to reach the enemy. But here, the range of the mortar is 32 inches, and they're within 32 inches, so we're free to open fire. Check danger close. These 76s are further than 4 inches away, so we're free to go. And you can angle the artillery template however you'd like to ensure that there's no danger close warnings, and to ensure that you get the most amount of damage on the enemy unit as possible. So after you've ranged in and put your artillery marker down, there's going to be quite a few variables determining whether you're going to hit the infantry or tank that you're firing at. The first is if the enemy that you ranged in is near terrain, then it's going to be a +1 to hit the enemy. So this Panzer Grenadier platoon is hit on a 4+, but because they're in a crop field, it's going to be a 5+ now. If you ranged in at night, it's another +1 to hit, so these would be a 6+, but because we're not playing at night, we're not gonna do that. It's another +1 for each time that you failed to range in. So we got it on the first try, but had you gotten it on the second try, it would be another +1, and had you gotten it on the third try, then it would be another +1. And because we're only firing with one weapon, because we only have one mortar, then we're going to have to reroll all successful hits that we get. That's if you're only firing with 1 or 2 artillery weapons. But if you're firing with 5 or more artillery weapons, you get to reroll all failed hits. So there's 9 German infantry there under the artillery template, which means we roll 9 dice. It looks like we only score 5 of those hits, but we're going to have to reroll it, considering that we only fired with 1 artillery weapon. So we forgot to reroll hits here. We just went on straight to saves. So the infantry get to roll saves after they get hit. But because there's 5 shots that hit, the infantry unit would be pinned down. Looks like only one of them fails their save. Now this range in marker on the board does not go away unless the infantry unit moves or if it ranges in at a different location. Now 2 things to keep in mind. First of all, if this artillery was targeting a tank team or tank unit, then you would use the anti-tank of the mortar, which is only 1, against the top armor of the tank. So this wouldn't have been able to do anything, because had the tank rolled armor saves, then it would have saved it, of course. But for some different artillery, it might have an anti-tank of 6 or 7, which is a little more likely to do damage to the tank. And it's the exact same thing as when something shoots at a tank, the same bailed out rules and firepower. It's just all listed on the unit card. Salvo follows the exact same rules as artillery, except for danger close, and it also targets top armor. So I'm going to quickly go over how planes work. So in the starting step, if you have a plane, like a unit of planes, then you have to roll to bring them in. So you just roll 1 dice, and it's just a 4 or higher, they come in. So right here, you can see that it says that on a score of 4 or higher, the planes come in, and you can put them wherever. So I'd fail here, which means the planes don't come in. But say I'd succeeded, I can place them anywhere on the board. So that could be enemy territory, my territory, wherever. Just remember that enemy units can fire at the planes, so just be careful about wherever you put them. So Everett's actually the only person with planes, so he kind of took over this for me. But what he said is that you usually want to go in from the side because you can't target top armor with normal guns. So his Stukas are going to go in from the side on these 76s. But before the Stukas can attack, you should check your unit card, and you can see how this guy has self-defense AA, and then some units might have dedicated AA. So before the Stukas can attack, these 76s can fire self-defense AA. So you can just fire the weapon once per team. But if it was dedicated AA, then you could fire your halted ROF at the Stukas. So they're just going to fire the self-defense AA. This is kind of like defensive fire whenever you're assaulting. So you can see that because they're planes, they hit on 5+, and it looks like one of them scores a hit. So we'll see if the plane can save that, because it has an aircraft save of 3+. So he rolls the save, and it looks like he does save it. But for the sake of showing you the rules, we're just going to say that it dies. So once a plane team dies, remove its flight stand and keep it on the ground as permanent terrain. So say both of them had stayed alive, then each Stuka gets to shoot twice, as you can see on the stat card. And it looks like only 2 of them hit. So after they're distributed evenly, we can see that the Stuka has an anti-tank of 9, and the side armor of the 76s is 3. So you roll armor, and these 76s are going to have to roll 6s, 7s, or 8s if they want to live. So continue with anti-tank combat as normal, and if it was infantry, it would behave just like shooting at infantry with other infantry. So as you can see, this Stuka is a little different because its main gun is an artillery. So you go about artillery just like usual. So you have your artillery template, but the only thing different about airplane artillery that is instead of having a danger close of 4 inches, you have a danger close of 8 inches. So you couldn't have any friendlies within 8 inches of this artillery template. After the shooting step or assault step or whenever you want to, you must take the airplanes off of the field so you can call them in again. There's no bonuses or anything to call them in again, it's just another 4+ roll. So the last rule we're going to cover is gone to ground. So, if this unit of Shermans did not move, shoot, or assault, then they're gone to ground, which means that it's +2 to hit. So if they're normally 4+ to hit, then now they're a 6+ to hit. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been so fun to work on. I'm hoping that we can make some more videos like this, and I hope that you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next week. Peace out.